Good morning. It's Friday, December 12th. I'm Vincent Fanvan, and this is Always Booked Live, your daily briefing to keeping your calendar and your pipeline always booked. On today's show, we're going to break down what the Fed rate means for your cash reserves, how tariffs are forcing Main Street to cut off staff hours, and what the permanent QBI deduction means for your 2026 insurance tax planning. But first, your operating cash is losing money every single day. Here's where to park it instead. Let's start with something that every service business owner deals with, but rarely optimizes: where to park your operating cash. So the Fed just cut rates again, and high yield savings accounts are still paying up to 5%, but that's not going to last forever. The Fed Reserve cut its benchmark rate to a 3-year low of 3.5% to 3.75% in December, making it the third consecutive rate reduction this year. So while average traditional savings accounts yield just 0.4% according to the FDIC data, top high yield savings accounts can still offer as high as 5.84% APY. So this gap is widening between banks that are passing through the rate cuts as well as those that are still offering competitive yields. So according to Wall Street Journal, policymakers made 3 rate reductions in September, October, and December, dropping that benchmark rate to a range that we really haven't seen since 2022. So for small business owners, it really creates a critical window to be able to lock in those yields on operating reserves before that cash and that return disappears. Coming onto the show to discuss how to park this money, where to park this money, CEO, founder, sponsor Donaldson from Captive Demand and FirstFuture.ai. Hey, Spencer, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Vincent?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Happy Friday to you. So when you see this news of like the rate cut coming out, right? Like yesterday we were talking about, hey, rate cut happened. And, the Fed signaled that this might be, the last one for a while, or definitely not to expect as many next year. There's kind of like two sides to that, right? I know you're in the process of buying a house right now or looking for a house, and like interest rates are having an impact on that. So there's like a side of Spencer that goes, oh, awesome, right? Rate cut is great if you're on the home buyer side. Potentially it's great on the home seller side, right? Because it brings the buyers out. But, the piece that's not certain is like, do you remember back in like 2006 when you take a look at like interest rates on savings accounts, like the nomenclature back then, I mean, you could put money into a savings account, get 3%, 4%, 5% back pretty consistently on it. And like I found myself in the past few years just going like, gosh, why do I even have a savings account anymore?
No, I 100% agree. I mean, there's not, a lot of us are holding cash waiting for the right time to buy. At least I am. That's why we're looking at houses now. And the thing that I think is interesting for a lot of people is they don't, a lot of the business owners I talk to don't even think about taking money out of savings. And there's a lot of other vehicles you can utilize to get more for your money. And if you're not putting your money to work, the bank will. And essentially being at such low rates doesn't make sense. So the biggest thing I could tell the small business owners is shop around and figure out, where your money should be. If you've been in the same banking account for the last 8 years, I get it. It's safe and it's easy, but I definitely think it's time to shop and look around at different vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely. And having multiple bank accounts is definitely a starting point on that. Like a lot of early entrepreneurs, they open up one checking account. There's one checking account for everything. I use Brex, which is one of the more modern banks. One of the things that I like about it is it's a few clicks to be able to create an additional account. And so it's really easy to be able to set up additional checking accounts where you can sweep money automatically from one account over to another. So, every, I think, month or 2 weeks or something like that, there's money that's swept over to another account. And then that's what goes into my quarterly tax payment. So it's kind of money that's just held there for a quarterly tax payment. But with Brex, you can't even sign up for one account. They give you 3 accounts right away. And so your first one is your checking. So I think everybody knows what that one is for. Your second one is actually a high interest account. Right now, Brex is at 3.94%. That's as of the morning of December 12th. But, you don't get these types of returns if you oftentimes like go to a normal like brick and mortar retail bank. Prior I was at Bank of America, and I don't think I had anything that offered me close to 4%. American Express also has a business savings account that has a pretty high yield as well. And then the last account that Brex does is a true like Volt Treasury account. And on that one, the way that it works is when you make deposits into that account, it can be up to a few million, but then they actually sweep it across multiple FDIC insured accounts. And every single day, they're moving the money from one bank over to another. But it's also distributing your risk because it's separating out your money and putting it across a bunch of banks. When you have something that happens like that Silicon Valley Bank crash, it's much, much better if that's 1/10 of your funds as opposed to 95% of your funds.
100%. There's still an aversion to a lot of these tools like that, but a lot of people don't know that they have that ability now to do that, to separate that out. But I think a big thing too is just making sure you have multiple accounts. You brought that up, but a lot of people have like one slush fund account for taxes and everything like that. Like you should definitely have multiple accounts.
What's the system that you've seen work?
I mean, definitely you want to have, you talked about it, having tax reserves in one account. You could have that in a high yield account, and then 60 to 90 days in your of operating cash as well in another account. And then the cash that you're not going to touch for 6 to 12 months in a different type of account, maybe a CD ladder or something like that. But there's those are kind of the three main ones if you're trying to keep it simple. If you have a tool like Brex or Ramp or something like that, it makes Mercury. It easier to do multiple. Mercury, yeah, those three are good.
Yeah, you talked about a CD ladder. Let's talk a little bit about that, because like what's going to happen with Brex is, as there are more interest rate drops, like it is a variable interest rate savings account. And so the rate will go down. For a CD ladder, I know I've talked to others, where the pros and cons of it are the CD ladder will lock up the money for a period of time, but those terms don't have to be very long. It could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, but with locking in that capital, even though it's less liquid, it also locks in your rate. Whereas when you put the money into like this Brex 3.94% account, you have same hour liquidity with no hidden fees, no minimums. And so that money is as good as cash with the same hour liquidity. But now that I think about it, like there probably is a strategy that I should be implementing where I'm doing 6 and 12 month CDs where every 6 months I'm putting it back in, and then maybe holding 50% of my 6-month fund in those CDs and the other 50% with that same hour liquidity.
You should. It's tough. Like we're very privileged to be able to have these conversations. Maybe a lot of business owners don't have that much cash on hand, but there's something you can do no matter what, and it comes with shopping around. If you don't have a ton of operating cash, then shop around and see what you can get. Otherwise, use a tool like Brex, Ramp, any of those tools, and that'll help. But yeah, there are vehicles that you can utilize if you do have that cash. The CD ladder, like you said, it does lock it up. But if you have the cash on hand and you're not planning on using it, you don't think that, some catastrophe is going to happen or something like that, it's definitely a good move.
I mean, let's talk about for the business owner that doesn't have an emergency fund today, doesn't have that 3-month operating capital or 6-month operating capital. Like, what do you think the first steps are to being able to do that? I know we're going through and we're reviewing all of our software contracts right now, taking a look at whether we have tools that are redundant. Over the course of the year, it was like baffling. Like all of a sudden we looked at it and we had 6 different tools that had a meeting recorder feature in it. So, we definitely don't need to be paying for multiple tools that do the exact same thing. I think the other piece as well is as we've had natural attrition in the business, we've really taken a look at, do we need a full headcount for that? Could that headcount actually be a contractor with AI? Or could that just be something that we start building an AI agent and then we can tuck away that cash as opposed to replacing headcounts automatically?
I think it's just about being organized. So reorganizing all your subscriptions and all your spend, and then because what we find is a lot of people don't even know what they're spending, especially if you've got multiple team members. And I know you've told me Brex has different features where you can, really track an individual team member's spend. But a lot of people that we talk to are not tracking that real well. So they just need to be very on top of it and make sure that they're evaluating those things on a monthly basis.
Yeah, and in the corporate space, you have a lot of players like Concur that do expense management. So this is issuing credit cards to individual employees or individual leaders. This really makes sense, especially for employees that need to travel. But you would need another tool that would import all of the credit card statements, and then employees could fill out expense reports with Brex. That's all built in. And so Brex actually provides you the software for that expense management, all the approval routing, rules, and automation. You can book flights, you can book hotels, and all of that all in one space. For the size of business that we are, there's no way that we would pay for a dedicated tool to be able to do this. And so it was nice to have it built into the bank account. And I think Mercury and Ramp are the exact same way as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, with Brex, is there a fee for Brex? Is it transaction fees they're running off of, or subscription?
For Brex, they make money when your cash sits as cash, just like every other bank.
Okay, yeah.
But we're not paying a set subscription rate for it, and so there are qualifications to be able to qualify for services like Mercury, services like Brex. Like you do have to have a certain amount of cash on hand, but if you can hit that number, it's a pretty good rate of return. But they also make their money like a bank, like every other bank does as well when that cash is sitting there as cash.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So let's talk a little bit about what the takeaways are for service owners. We'll bring Spencer back on here in just a moment. So if you're running a local service business with $50,000 in operating cash, moving just 0.4% from a traditional account to a 5% high yield account can actually generate you an additional $2,300 annually, enough to cover things like your CRM subscription or your marketing automation platform, or pay for even a mobile app for your business. So for online business services with larger cash reserves, the difference is even more dramatic. The key is acting before the banks fully adjust their rates downward. So you want to look for online banks, you want to look for credit unions, community banks that are competing aggressively for deposits. If you don't need immediate liquidity, you want to consider the laddering CD. The best 7-month CD currently pays 4.4% APY with just a $500 or $500 minimum. Still to come, how tariffs are forcing Main Street to make painful staffing decisions. This toy store owner paid $1,200 in tariffs on a $5,000 order. Ouch. Then cut her staff to part-time. So let's take a look at this tariff crisis and how it's hitting retailers and import-dependent businesses this holiday season. The average tariff rate is now over 16.8%. This is the highest since 1935. Owners are being forced to choose between raising prices, cutting hours, or closing altogether. Small business owners across the country are blaming tariffs, forcing them to cut staff hours and reduce operations. And this is according to Inc. magazine. Thea Brown, who runs the World of Mirth toy store in Richmond, Virginia, she paid $1,200 in tariffs on a $5,000 order. That's effectively a 24% hit that she couldn't absorb. So she told Inc. that she may have to move employees from full-time to part-time because payroll is the easiest thing to eliminate. Rachel Lutz, who's the owner of the Peacock Room, a clothing boutique in Detroit, said that 3 of her small business friends have had to close in the past 2 weeks, including a 33-year-old candle shop that just couldn't sustain the tariff costs. And the data backs up these stories. Tariffs brought in $159 billion in duties during fiscal 2025. This is up 150% from $88 billion previously. But what's the takeaway for small business owners? Local service businesses that see retail products, med spas with skincare lines, salons with hair products, fitness studios with supplements. Tariffs are an immediate margin killer in an area where it's supposed to be a margin boost for you with these extra retail sales. So you really have 3 different options. Number 1, pass the cost on to customers, but risk losing your bookings. Number 2, absorb the cost and watch your profitability vanish. Or number 3, cut labor hours and damage your service quality. The smarter play is actually to audit your product mix right away and identify which retail items are actually truly driving profit versus just taking up shelf space. You want to consider switching to domestic suppliers or private label partnerships. Most importantly, communicate transparently with clients about the price increase. Data shows that 54% of consumers already expect tariff-related price hikes, and they're planning on spending cuts accordingly. So let's wrap with a story that shows how tax policy are actually creating real opportunity for growth. This next one actually comes from my home newspaper, the Tennessean, here in Nashville, Tennessee. The butcher shop owner permanently used the permanent QBI deduction to actually hire 3 new employees. And here's the math. So finally, tariffs are squeezing margins, but there's positive news on the tax front. The 20% 20% qualified business income deduction is now permanent. One Tennessee butcher shop owner said that it actually completely changed his expansion plans. In a guest column for the Tennessean featuring a butcher shop owner that credited the permanent QBI deduction savings with his business to actually enable this growth. This was in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or the OBBBA, signed into law in 2025. It made the 20% QBI deduction permanent. So previously, it was set to expire after 2025, and an increase phased out thresholds for high income earners. But for businesses earning $100,000, the QBI deduction reduces taxable income by $20,000. So it creates a significant tax savings that can be reinvested into hiring, into equipment, into expansion. Legislation also restored 100% depreciation bonus for assets that are placed in after service after January 2025. So it increased Section 179 expense limits from 1.25 million up to 2.5 million. These changes particularly can benefit service businesses that need to reinvest in equipment, in technology, into facilities, into improvements. And according to tax experts at Thomson Reuters, the QBI deduction allows pass-through business owners to generally deduct 20% of their business income on their individual tax return. So coming back onto the show, Spencer Donaldson, CEO, founder, captive demand at firstfuture.ai. Spencer, like, these are the types of things where, like, if you're a small business owner and you don't see it, like, you could completely miss it. It's not like during the pandemic where every single major national headline was talking about pandemic relief for small businesses.
Yeah, and it's hard to stay on top of everything. It's changing so quickly. This ruling at least signs it into permanence. That's another thing. As a business owner, you're always on the fence about what's going to change here, and this allows you to actually plan based on what you're going to get back. And I think it's super helpful. But you're right, like, staying on top of this stuff is hard for most small business owners.
And
that's why shows like yours are great.
Yeah, and on this one, like, this is one where anybody with pass-through deductions is literally talking about most small businesses with LLCs that are structured that way. So this is pretty broadly applicable, no matter how big you are or how small you are. The pass-through LLC is one of the most common ways to being able to form a business. The other big one, especially for software businesses like your company or my company, is really that research deduction is absolutely huge in terms of how you write off your depreciation on your R&D.
Yeah. No, all of these things are super helpful, and I definitely recommend anyone who has a business, a pass-through business, talk to your CPA about it. They're going to have much more information, but I would definitely. There's no reason not to utilize these benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the understated things is I think a lot of business owners are pretty frugal. And so it could become pretty easy for you as you're starting a business, as you're growing a business, to say, hey, I could just sign up for QuickBooks, go click, 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 and do it myself and save my $1,000 a year or $2,000 a year or $3,000 a year or whatnot. But the being able to accurately put your deductions, being able to forecast your cash flow, like, that is something where being able to have a CPA or being able to have somebody who's managing your books that does that full time for a living and can give you advice on it is really beneficial. And if you can find a CPA that works in your industry as well, there are many CPAs that specialize in supporting marketing agencies like Spencer's company, my company. There are many CPAs that specialize just in technology and building, software, to online coaching, to specifically, I met somebody the other day where they only work with aesthetics business, and it was a CPA that specifically just worked with med spas around the country. And having that type of expertise baked in can definitely be helpful. Spencer, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday morning, always booked live. So what's the takeaway for small business owners, service business owners? This is a game changer for local service business owners, online service providers, B2B firms that are structured as pass-through entities. If you're earning $200,000 in net income, the permanent QBI deduction saves you roughly $12,000 in federal taxes, assuming you're on a 24% bracket. So that's more than enough to be able to cover a new marketing campaign that you could put that into ad spend. It actually covers an entire Viton One mobile app project or portal for the entire year. So that leaves you dollars that you can then reinvest into the business. But the timing really matters here. To claim 100% bonus depreciation on the equipment, on the assets, it must be placed in service by December 31st, 2025. So for med spas that are buying new laser equipment, salons that are upgrading chairs, or consultants that are investing in CRM or workflows and automations, buying before the end of the year accelerates your deductions and improves your cash flow. So you want to consult your tax professional immediately about the income management strategies to maximize your QBI in 2026. Today's show is brought to you by Viton One, the AI native platform that turns your CRM and the tools that you already use into a custom branded mobile app and client portal for your clients. If you have clients that are bouncing around between booking links and emails and DMs, Viton wraps that all into one place on the mobile phone screen of their home screen so that they can book, so that they can rebook, and they can stay engaged without you chasing them. To see how this works for local service businesses, online experts, as well as B2B firms, head to Viton.com. That's VYTEN.com and request your free Viton app strategy session today. All right, let's hit some quick stories that you need to know before you head out. Number one, 73% of small businesses are leaving free money on the table. Here's the fix. 73% of small business owners are still operating without a loyalty program today. And that's according to new Sum Up research, leaving significant revenue on the table. For service businesses, a simple points-based system or a VIP tier can actually increase lifetime value for your clients by 25 to 40% without adding new customer acquisition costs. Number two, Lululemon CEO just quit after a 50% stock cash. What that means for premium wellness brands. Lululemon CEO stepped down amid a 50% stock drop as founder Chip Wilson called the company, quote, lost its edge. The leadership crisis shows how even premium wellness brands struggle with competition and shifting consumer expectations. This is a warning for med spas, for fitness studios, for high-end salons to stay focused, product focused, and customer obsessed. Jobless claims hit a 4-year high. Why this signals an opportunity for service businesses. Initial unemployment claims surged to 236,000, a 4-year high, as hiring actually slows dramatically. While this signals economic caution, it also means less competition for talent and more motivated candidates. Smart service business owners are using this to low hire and low fire, an environment to upgrade team quality as well as cross-train existing staff members. Small cap stocks just hit a record high. Why Main Street could care. The Russell 2000 index of smaller companies hit a consecutive all-time high as the Fed signaled potential rate cuts ahead. For service business owners considering expansion or financing or planning on an exit, this signals an improved capital market and could potentially lead to higher valuations for well-run local and online service business owners. That's Always Booked Live. I'm Vincent Fanvan. We'll be back on Monday with the news and ideas that keep your calendar and your clients' relationships always booked. If you want to see what a Viton mobile app or client portal could look like for your business, head to Viton.com. Thanks for listening.